We're joined by our guest, and that's Akin Olaoye. He is the founder of House of Lynette, and we'll be talking to him about some of these very interesting demands put forward by the Nigerian youth. Akin, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Akin. So first of all, I want to ask you what your view is on the protests so far, the first 2 days, and this the third day from your experience.
So the turnout has been largely impressive across the nation. You would notice predominantly in the north, we're seeing a new attitude with Nigerians deciding to be a lot more vocal. There's been past, assumptions that northern Nigerians are not feeling the brunt of a bad economy and bad leadership. I think the last few days has revealed the opposite. In Lagos and many other areas across the south, you've seen people turn out in high numbers, peacefully for the most part, except for where we've seen interruptions or disruptions on police force. It's created, the optics that makes it come across as violent. Now, talk about the looting, and criminal activities, with burning and all of that. That's a whole different conversation. But in general, people have been very, very, eager to come out. I think today you probably see a larger turnout than the last 2 days, just given the fact that it's a weekend.
Right. Now, I also want to talk about, before we get into the demands, hopefully, I just humor me for a second, would you? We have seen the protests in the last 2 days. We've seen some level of violence in the north, and we've seen some level of resistance from the police, from the Nigerian police as well. And we've also seen anti-protesters who have also attacked and attacked and maimed the protesters. That's the hashtag End Bad Governance protesters. And also there have been measures by the government that they have said that the heavy security or the heavy presence of security that we have seen in strategic locations across major cities and the 36 states plus the FCT, as well as the designated points that they allocated for the protest. And now with day 3, from most of our reporters that we've spoken to, from Delta to Borno State and also to Yobe as well, it seems to be the number or the turnout for this protest seems to be declining. What do you say to that?
So I wouldn't arrive at the conclusion that it's been declining. Let's look out for today's turnout, and then we can reach that assessment. In terms of the police force deploying assets and manpower, we commend them for living up to their fiduciary duties. I think it's their responsibility as, again, for many of us as taxpayers, to see that we have the police out, to ensure there's law and order. Question is, who's the police securing in this instance? I'll say for the most part, we've seen a lot of responsible police, activities, but some of what we've seen has not been so inspiring, given the fact that you've seen thugs attack innocent citizens with, the police just standing by and observing, not making arrests or even trying to, again, offer some wall of insulation from some of that. You talked about Borno and a couple other cities where, again, there's been, reports of violence. Look, a country where people are feeling the worst, of any policy that can hold you down, net worth, for the average middle class household has been cut in half. Record unemployment, record inflation. You're talking about cost of living that the living can no longer afford. Of course, it's bound to reveal a lot of the rot that we have in our system. You talk about illiteracy in many parts of the country. You find unemployed youths out there. Many of them are misguided. So again, when they see a protest of this magnitude and an ability to express themselves, it always equally offers some pathway for criminals to emerge and try to take advantage. It's for the police to make sure we push back on that. For the most part, a lot of protesters have equally done their part as, active citizens with making arrests of individuals, returning looted items. So we cannot say, the protest has created an opportunity for criminals to thrive, even if it's an event or an activity organized by the police force. In this era, given the state of things in Nigeria, you're bound to see people who would choose the wrong path. Now, the demands of the protests, there's no Nigerian that wakes up every day looking at the fact that the Nigeria of today is a lot worse than the Nigeria of 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, or 20 years ago. I don't expect any country to progress in a negative direction and expect its citizens to move around and act as though all is well and good. So you're bound to see these types of agitation. And for the most part, the organization has equally called for peaceful turnouts, people being civil, collaborate with the police. And then there's this, poor narrative that, the organizers of the protests are unknown and they're in the shadows. Everything you see, people holding, placards indicating what their demands are, it's there for the naked eye to see.
All right, let's talk about these demands now, Akin. Let's talk about youth employment initiatives. Now, these are one of the demands from the youth to the Nigerian government. Now, with the high rate of unemployment, it's going to be present in the minds of these young men as they're out there protesting. However, what are practical strategies that you can suggest for the government to adopt to create sustainable job opportunities and support the youth and their, entrepreneurs?
So you have a country where about over 60% of its population are in the youth demography. This same demography is finding the least investment in activities that impacts their future. You talk about the fact that over 70% of our youth today are unemployed. Where we talk about human capacity development, investing in education, investing in skills acquisition, they're equally creating a plain level field for young people to be able to climb up the ladder, pull themselves up, build network, start families, equally create wealth. None of that, you can brag about in our current society in Nigeria today. You talk about, economic policies. Let me even give you an example. If you're a 21-year-old graduate from a university, Babcock, University of Ife, and you start a small business. Let's even say, okay, you want to export products out of Nigeria. How easy is it to export a product out of Nigeria for products that are locally made? Let's even talk about local business, ease of doing business that we often brag about and hear all kinds of, government, conversations around. If you talk to the average entrepreneur in Nigeria, young, in the youth demography, they would tell you all of the challenges and complexities it is with even finding ways to extract profit from a business they wake up 8 to 8 trying to conduct daily. Now, you talked about something else that is quite important. The fact that we need to see that the youth can look to the future and say, okay, we have dreams that we can achieve. You talk about imports, for example. The customs is charging black market rates on import duties and customs excise, and you ask yourself why. So when you look at a lot of policies and a lot of statements from the government, there is no alignment. You talk about access to credit. If I'm a 25-year-old entrepreneur and I want to get a $5 million loan, I'm being asked to go get a landed property or come up with some sort of collateral with interest rates exceeding 30%. What economy have you seen interest rates at 30% create an opportunity for any business to be profitable? So I can go on and on and on. Things are just not working in Nigeria. Then you have a political establishment, an elite that finds it convenient to spend 21 billion on a VP's mansion. You're purchasing private jets in excess of 100 billion naira. In the same country where a young individual cannot look you dead in the eye and say, I will start a business, and from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm going to have constant power. So I have to find capital to buy a generator. I have to either find money to buy some type of renewable energy, maybe solar panels. How many young people can afford that? So everything about this Nigerian economy is suppressing young people from being able to achieve their dreams. And then you talk about the fact that, you have insecurity, ravaging the northern part of the country. So things like agriculture, where young people can go into and build networks or create wealth for themselves is impossible because they're going to be met, on your farmlands by a bandit or a terrorist or whatever it is, they want to brand them. And you just ask yourself, next, you talk about technology, access to even capital, using your Naira, which is again, purchasing software or services on the internet is next to impossible. If you're a young Nigerian graphic designer or you're into IT, getting payment to your Nigerian bank account from a foreign employer where you work remotely is next to impossible. You have to find all kinds of corner, find third-party apps to find ways to remit money to you. I'm just saying, Nigeria is not working. And for young people, there's no way forward.
You were talking about entrepreneurs and basically the future of the young Nigerians, especially at this time in this dispensation that we find ourselves with the economic downturn. You are an entrepreneur yourself. You are the CEO of House of Lynette. And a couple of months ago, one of your branch, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of your small outlets for the House of Lynette was pulled down, which was at the landmark beachfront. It was one of the properties that was pulled down. One of the things that happens with situations like this is that we just put into numbers the amount of people that lost their jobs, but we sometimes don't give human angles to that number. So I'd like for you to speak to me about your journey when you found out about your property being pulled down, and also the employees that lost their jobs after. I'm getting somewhere, but just give me, I would like your submission with that one first.
As a young entrepreneur that decided to bet on Nigeria, I'm a diaspora and, worked hard, built a nest egg and figured, rather than invest that money in another man's country, let me, relocate back to Nigeria. So I established the business equally, at the peak of the Buhari recession, but again, found very strategic ways to, stay afloat, expand locations. So Landmark, obviously being a very, what I call, well-planned tourist front with a blueprint that I could see aligning with sort of the vision for where I was taking my business. I felt would be a great location. So we moved in, had a very nice container front store, had about 4 employees there. Just beyond the 4 employees, there's an ecosystem of support individuals. So you're talking about technicians that, help with store lighting, marketing staff that work on the weekends. So if I looked at that location, at least 15 to 20 people, just surrounding its operations. Seeing the government come in, rerouting the planned coastal highway again in the middle of an economy where we're saying, where do we make the right investments? For me, I found out to be quite absurd. But again, stripping out an entire ecosystem that's, really putting our tourism industry on the map. I can't explain it. Forget the fact whether I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I found ways to reabsorb some of my staff, but a few of them had to lose their jobs. Very unfortunate. Even the ecosystem of suppliers that, make local T-shirts and beads and bracelets and, beach shorts. Those people they don't have anywhere to supply those wares. So it was not just one outlet, but then an ecosystem that empowered a lot of young people. Let me be very, very, specific, and equally an ecosystem that was a thriving industry that could really, again, bring in FDI, create local opportunities, and make us a desirable destination. So it was very sad all around, very sad.
Thank you for that. So 3 things I took out of this. You were a diasporan who decided to come back home and invest. And then you also wanted to contribute because you were hoping, you believed in the Nigerian dream and wanted to contribute to nation building. And then lastly, the young people that you employed, homegrown talents, and all of that put together, right? So those are the 3 things that I took away from that submission. Now, in trying to do that, this has now happened. One government policy have now happened that this persons have been out of a job, right? Yes or no?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
And so with that, when you now look at the cause of that was because of a super highway, a new highway, a coastal highway from Lagos to Calabar. Those policies that the government have brought in, they said that it will in turn change it will contribute to the economic terrain of Lagos, and by large, Nigeria is a coastal highway. It would unify all the states together. It would increase commerce and so to speak, and so much more. And so the policies will take time. That's what the government have said. They said the policies will take time, but they will work eventually. Why not wait for the policies to work?
We're talking about a country where continuity is not a culture, right? The Buhari regime comes in, starts a project. The Tinubu regime comes in, says, "Oh no, want to move in a different direction." You call it. Let's even go back to this coastal highway. I studied engineering, so before you would even come in and say, "Okay, you want to build a super highway," you basically, done a lot of consultations. You talk about ecological studies, given the fact that you're positioned right on the Atlantic, right? You're equally looking at, impact of community. What's, the net effect? Is it, you basically do your feasibility studies. You do your discovery. You try to find, areas that, again, is this the best investment, given, the state of the nation? Are we, positioned for expansion? When we talk about, creating new opportunities in tourism. So how do you kill something that is a tourism that's got a strong foundation, brings in FDI? I mean, I can tell you this, over 25% of the customers and individuals we engaged at that landmark beachfront were not Nigerians. These were tourists. So you strip out that entire tourism ecosystem to create a new one that's not going to show up another 10 years, at least, at a minimum. So when you even talk about infrastructure projects and, how it creates or opens doors to new opportunities, let's even focus on what is currently existing today. You have a TINAPA that is paying billions. Nothing comes out of it. You have a lot of roads that are, that got construction started, halfway through have been abandoned. You have an east-west road that has been in construction since I was 14 years old. I am 42, and you're now telling me that overnight, miraculously, you will look at a very difficult terrain like an ocean front, and you will build what you've not been able to accomplish with the east-west road. Please save me the bullocks.
Thank you very much, Akin. Now we're going to try and establish communication with Soweto, who is currently at Jota, the protest ground currently. Soweto, good morning and thank you for joining us. We've been trying to establish connection with you. I hope we have it now.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Soweto. So Soweto, please give us an understanding of what's happening currently at Ojota, where you are at.
Well, we are here this morning once again on day 3 of the End Bad Governance protest at Ojota, Lagos. Nigerians are gathering in bits and pieces, in trickles, to join today's protest. And the police so far appear to be complying with us to ensure that we don't have the same experience we had yesterday when hoodlums tried to attack us. We hope that the police commissioner will maintain this level of professionalism to the end of today, because like we have made repeatedly clear, despite the threats against us, despite the danger and the risk, we are never going to submit our right to freedom of assembly, our right to freedom of expression, our right to gather and protest peacefully. These are fundamental human rights that have been won by generations in the past for Nigeria. We are never going to submit it. And that's why this protest has continued today, despite the risk and the danger. What we continue to say is that the Nigerian people should lose their fear. They should no more be afraid. Come out and join us. This struggle, once again, is to demand the reversal of fuel price hike, demand the reversal of electricity tariff, demand the reversal of all the anti-poor policies that President Tinubu government has imposed on all of us. We are fed up with the condition of hunger and hardship, and we are saying enough is enough. We are also demanding a restructuring of Nigeria's economy in such a way that it favors the mass majority of the people instead of what it is now, where it only favors a tiny rich few. Capitalism remains the fundamental problem that is wrong with Nigeria, and that is why one of the very most important demands at this protest is for system change, is for socialist change. That is what we want.
I have to ask you, right? And I asked this question yesterday, and I have to ask today as well. Today is day 3, and from the visuals that we've seen, from the live feed we've been seeing since 9 a.m. this morning, it seems to be a small crowd. Is the crowd diminishing day 3, from day 1 to day 2 and now day 3? Or is there been an uptick in attendance of protesters?
It's still early days to say what size of the crowd will be here at Ojota. Yesterday, when we started, we also started very small. And at the end of the day, the crowd kept growing. The reality is that after 2 days of protest, it means that people are not able to wake up as early as before because of fatigue. But I'm very quite sure that more people are making their way down here. Today is also a work-free day, it's a Saturday. You can expect that even larger crowd will gather.
Right. I can see the security personnel behind you there. What's their presence been like? I mean, today, has it been bigger? The presence of security agencies, have there been more security agencies, given the fact that on day one there was a number of arrests from our conversation from yesterday evening? There was a number of arrests, about 12 persons were arrested. How was it like yesterday after the protest? Was there any more arrests? Were protesters accosted by anti-protesters? Were they thugs who accosted other persons? Or how's it been like? Talk to me.
Well, thankfully, there was no such incident yesterday at the end of the protest. From all our information that we gathered at the end of yesterday, there was no arrest or attack on anyone. And that's why we hope that the same thing will be the case today.
All right, now regarding the demands that you put forward, reversal of price hike when it comes to petrol and the other demands, if the government says, okay, we are ready to dialogue, I'm wondering who exactly they'd be dialoguing with. Which youth leader is going to be representing the youth? The call for dialogue has been louder the past couple of hours, so I'm wondering exactly how this is going to operate when the time comes. Do you have any information about this?
Well, like the protesters here at Ojota have made clear right from day one, they don't expect that the government has to wait for a roundtable conference before it begins to meet the demands. Protesters have said since day one that they have made their demands very clear. And I completely agree with that, because the reality is that we have to stop the tradition whereby government would expect that until it sits at the roundtable with some people, that is the only time it can begin to address the concerns of people. This protest ground is the assembly of all Nigerian people who are affected by the economic crisis, and we have made our demands very clear from day one. What we want any government that is responsible to do is to continue, to begin rather, to address and implement those demands. We think that it will be a complete waste of money trying to get some people to Abuja in order to sit down to begin to negotiate. In any case, the policies of this government were actually introduced without discussing with anyone. Look at how fuel subsidy was removed. It was simply removed at Ibu Square during the swearing ceremony on national TV. President Tinubu did not have any consultation with anyone. So why should it wait for a dialogue, for a conference, before he reverses what he never consulted us about? So we have to be very clear about this. This is not a struggle where some leaders will sit at a conference drinking tea or drinking coffee. If the president is sincere and is prepared to listen to the demands of the Nigerian people, then we expect to begin to see actions being taken on those demands that have been made clear since day one.
Well, Soweto, I want to say thank you. I can hear the buzz keep going up there, so I do want to say thank you for that. We will definitely keep touch with you, or be in contact with you, or in communication with you. There we go, as the protest progresses. But many thanks to you. Well, I want to come to Akin for this one. Akin, one of the calls has been electoral reforms. The call for electoral reform to ensure free and fair elections is one of the major demands, right? And one of them was also to probe the billions of naira, about 33 billion naira that was used there. About hopefully I can get that figure correctly, but it was over 33 billion naira that was allocated for the elections in 2022. And so it begs to ask, 2023, I beg your pardon. And so it begs to ask the question of reforms. How then can these reforms happen? What will be the electoral reforms? Because for this last election that produced the Tinubu administration, we saw an improvement in terms of tech. I won't say improvement with the process, but improvement with tech. So BVAS was introduced, which is the bimodal verification machine. And there was also the platform where the results were supposed to be uploaded for all of Nigerians to see. That was also introduced as well. There was also an extensive exercise of voter registration process that was extended oftentimes. And we also saw an uptick in registration with young voters as well. And so when we call for electoral reforms, what exactly are these reforms?
Thanks for that. And I would say this, the electoral amendment that you saw Buhari assent into law basically got a lot of oxygen post-EndSARS, and I have to give the youth of this country a lot of credit. I was equally involved in a lot of forums where we came up with, drafts, God rest his soul, Ario, Aristotle, Samson Itodo, and a couple other very, very active Nigerians. And, up from, the early registration, introducing limitations on, political appointees from not being able to run for elected office. There were a lot of improvements to the Electoral Act that we saw give us mileage. Now, we have a young democracy and nobody's looking for perfection day one. But you come out of the experience of 2023 and, the gross mismanagement of INEC as an institution. After, he traveled to Chatham House and made promises for the international community, again, eroding Nigeria's integrity, eroding our stand in front of the world. You come back home where the elections were held. On election day, I went to over 40 polling units, helping to make sure that at the end of the day, people understood the process, make sure the results are captured, make sure it's transmitted on the BVAS device, all of the metadata with, registered voters, issued ballot papers, making sure that the system worked. So we have very smart people in this country that came up with a process that you could say, I have faith in the system. That's why people were very emotional about that election. But then as the end of the election progressed and we saw how it was being managed, where human interference came into the equation, technology and software applications that could have done the work and made it seamless, the way I would transfer 20,000 naira to a colleague or to a relative and they check their device to get 20,000. It's not that they're getting 14,999 because there was a system glitch. None of that. INEC, again, as an institution, basically failed to meet its mandate. Yes, 33 billion indeed is a lot of money. Are we having house hearing on accountability? Are we asking the INEC chairman to submit himself to discuss all the operational failures? Ballot papers not being transported across the country. You had situations where, again, there was interference. Elections should be over in Nigeria on election day. How hard is that to achieve in 2024? So as citizens, as young people, asking for a system that works. So if you want 36%, carry go. But don't take us into a courtroom because you have an institution that, again, has intentional failures and disruptions introduced where we have clear-cut laws and guidelines to see that execution is the 100%. So again, we need to have hearings. Equally, you have a lot of unanswered questions with, the Electoral Act amendment. Results expected to be transmitted electronically from polling units to collation center. Yes or no? Let's not have all of the technicalities where an INEC chairman can decide what works or what doesn't work. If you can't transmit results election night, hey, schedule elections. You're saying technology fails? Okay. But don't make it seem that, you transmitted half the results and then the other half had to get collated, with pen and paper. So a lot of what you saw in Rivers State, where the will of citizens were upturned on its head, what you had in Benue upturned on its head. I mean, we cannot have a country in 2024, a young population of human beings that, I'd say this, lead top technology organizations across the world. And back at home in Nigeria, we can't get elections right. It is frustrating.
Okay, so how then can we get it right? I have to ask, how then can we get it right? Is it, the introduction of BVAS was to make sure to verify that those who are voting and not, usurpers or paid to vote. or you know what I mean, just to nib electoral ballot stealing in the bud. There was also the case of uploading the results, although they said they had technical glitches, but technical glitches are normal, you know. Network can fail at any time. We are in Nigeria. In the last 2 days, I mean, network have failed completely. I mean, I can't make phone calls. The internet is...
Did the network fail, really? Oh, but go ahead.
Well, I'm not MTN, and I don't know. I'm not the yellow or the, you know, the green and all the other colors network providers. So I do not know, right? But in spite of the colors of the rainbows that we're seeing, there are times where network will fail now. So which do we want? Is it mobile, where they now say, you know, somebody can now vote via their mobile phones? How then can we reform it where it is fail-proof?
So in every system, in every, you know, society across the world, it's human nature to interfere. But laws allow for people to understand that there will be repercussions. And where you have a country where the judiciary is up for sale, you have, you know, judicial rascality, where a lower court judge, you know, overrules, you know, a superior court judge, you start asking yourself, you know, are we a banana republic? So first of all, let's understand that we have a country where our laws are being respected and upheld by the courts. Secondly, we talk about competency, right? If you have an INEC chairman, a Mahmoud Yakub, that cannot, again, lead an organization and see that people voted with 200 ballot papers and results to show 200 split between two candidates can be transmitted in micro or milliseconds, the same way a bank MD has the duty in ensuring that the deposits and the trust of investors in his company are being upheld. If a bank CEO was to transmit 200,000 naira, where you deposited 600,000 naira, he would not have a job. So why do you have an INEC chairman in that chair? If only he was put in there to usurp and basically act, you know, carry out orders of the establishment. So these are the types of questions we're asking. You send an email. You don't get half of an email, you get a full email.
All right.
So since when did technology start working half and half? So we're just saying competency, rule of law, and accountability. And then equally have a House of Reps that does the work of the people. If the system fails or the institutions don't live up to it, then you summon them and you hold panel hearings.
Right. Well, Akin, we're going to come back to this conversation, but we need to go on a very short break. If you're just tuning in, you're watching the #EndBad Governance protest live coverage here on News Central TV. We'll take a short break. Stay with us.